So my name is Jack Jester. I have been wrestling in July 21 years. And I've been with ICW for, 45 years, something like that. A long time.
ICW original?
Yes. I've been here for every kind of incarnation of ICW. But yeah, a long time. But yeah, still here.
Still kicking.
Yeah, man, still kicking.
And the world champion too. You're wrestling tonight, obviously. You're kind of in the title fight tonight.
Yes,
How are you feeling?
Good. That was funny because I think it was Simon Cassidy put up a video of myself wrestling Drew at the Barras, which was 10 years ago. And then like almost to the day, it was last Christmas? I can never remember when I won the belt again. But yeah, so 10 years have passed from losing the belt to Drew to get back again. So that's how long I've been about.
Yeah. So you've seen ICW, as you say, in all its incarnations. You've been there when it was kind of quite small, even in the small shows. You've seen it grow and the big boom. How was that feeling there? You must have had a sense that when you were there that something was happening in terms of because really ICW kind of sparked the whole British wrestling boom in general. So you must have had a sense that was happening.
It was strange because obviously I've been wrestling for a long time, so that was pre-ICW, and at the time I was at All Star, so I've been away there for years. I was just the Scottish guy, I actually replaced Drew when Drew got signed. I put a kilt on and waved a Scotland flag, came out to bagpipes. I hated it, but I did it for a long time, and then I had an idea for a gimmick, a character that was based on BDSM and fetish. But there was nowhere that could have facilitated that at the time. So I called up the promoter of ICW, and I was like, I don't do it anymore. I was like, I've got this idea, it'd be worth just trying it and seeing if it works. So we ran one more show in Maryhill Community Centre, and there was hardly anybody there. But that night, I had a pro dominatrix as my valet, who was my best mate at the time. And at a certain point of the match, I slammed my opponent down, and she could make herself sick on demand. So I knew this, and backstage, I was feeding her with pancakes mixed with red food colouring and cans of Strongbow. And when the cue happened, she just pulled her head to the side, man, and all this red sludge came out. And there was a reaction. I don't know if it was a good reaction, but I remember lying there thinking, something happened there. You know what I mean? Something definitely happened. So we've come a long way since then.
Yeah. But
to think of that era when it really was we were an underground cult company. And despite the fact there was hardly anybody there, it felt big at the time. And I think it was just because it was different to everything. There was no other wrestling show in the UK that you could wrestle in that felt the same. So we did that, and then over time, it was just a series of kind of fortunate events. So I used to work in a walkabout in Glasgow, and I had been at a party one night, and I bumped into somebody in the street, and they were like, "I'll come to this party," and I went there, and there was a guy who worked in walkabout who'd been emailed by a wrestling company to bring wrestling there. And I was like, don't email him back, email this guy. And then that's how ICW got its start in the nightclubs. We went from the Apollo 23 was called, Classic Grand, Garage, Barras, all the way up through the SECC and the Hydro. But it definitely did feel that you were riding this massive wave at the time. I don't think any of us really understood just how big it was. But from that show with the Red Sick to the Hydro was 7 years apart. So it was quick.
It must have been quite a journey as well, obviously.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was amazing. But I think we had kind of caught lightning in a bottle back then. So it's easy to compare yourself from ICW to back then. But if you think of the roster we had on a full-time basis, all the time, it was you had myself, you had Grado, you had Lionheart, you had Wolfgang, you had the Coffee Brothers, you had Jackie Polo, it was so many people. And it's almost unimaginable now, because in this climate, it's a lot harder to book people, just because a lot of them are signed, or a lot of them kind of given up, or Do you know what I mean? So back then it was just, we had this constant, and then Drew came back full time. So he really was, like, despite the fact he was still living in America, we had him in every show.
Yeah.
And even thinking now, I'm like, I don't really understand how we managed it. Do you know what I mean? Just bringing him back and forward constantly, but it evened itself out because what he brought us was, a level up to what we were before.
Legitimacy.
Yeah. And like, and I say this, we can all take claim. Everybody in the company, had their part to play in it. But the Drew Galloway Grado storyline was the hook. And I've seen Grado from nothing all the way up. So I'd known Grado prior to Grado. The first time I met him, his name was Chipmunk, and he was the MC of the show. And then we were backstage at the Classic Grand, which was one of the bigger ones we did when we first started. And he was backstage, and I don't like him to be backstage. It shouldn't be there. So I was like, beat it, get out. And he was like, no, I'm meant to be here. I'm like, fuck off, like, I don't know who you are. And then it was like, Dallas, no, he's on the show. And I'm like, from me, but like, why is this guy backstage? And the reason he was there is because he went on a crusade to get himself booked. That was legit. He would walk the queue. We had a book Grado sign.
So the book Grado thing, that's legit.
It was legit. Yeah, I mean, we had to book him.
Yeah, just forced him. Because
there was nothing for us to work with prior to that. It wasn't like Grado was a thing and then we booked him.
Sure.
He was outside, chasing bookings, and then eventually we did the show in the garage, and he jumped the barrier and tagged with Drew McDonald, who is my ultimate wrestler. In fact, I've got the same tattoo as Drew McDonald on my leg. He was my hero, absolute nutcase of a man. In fact, that night, as a side story, we did that show, and we were walking towards a pub, and we went for a drink somewhere, and Drew went downstairs, and the guys that give you aftershave and the freshen up guys. Drew was like, give me that one. I think it was like a bottle of Jean Paul Gaultier or something, and he pulled the top off it and drank the bottle, and then gave the guy £1. He was like, there you go, thanks, and just walked away. I was like, I love this one. Yeah. And that's not the first time it was famous for it. It used to like get changed. They would like put stuff and have a wee swiggy's aftershave. Folk weren't even watching them. In that case. But yeah, so Gradomania really was a real thing. Like a really, like nobody, I'd never seen it before, and he just became such a legit megastar. Like he could lay claim to being the biggest star in wrestling since Big Daddy, because back then you were on TV every single week and one of the most famous people in the country, and this unimposing guy who hadn't really done anything before came in and started doing these promos that were so off the wall. He didn't try and look cool. He didn't try and look dominant. He went the other way. So that this massive community could look at him and go, I get you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm you. And I remember Grado saying to me one time, because he was like, I get hassled all the time. And I was like, well, that's a good thing, right? He was like, he went, no, but with you talking about me, he was like, if folk want a photograph with you, they'll come up and say, excuse me, Jess, would you mind if I get a photograph? And I go, you. He says, but with me, they just chase me down the street and jump on my back and go, Grado, you fat bastard. Because he's like, they feel like they know him. Yeah. And he's like, that's unsettling for a guy. He's like, I go, folk just keep jumping on my back and hitting my hat off my head thinking I'm just this funny guy. But he just went through the roof, and it was an absolute joy for me to see that from that all the way up. Almost the same as ICW. Like, the kind of arc was the same. To him getting to the selling at the SECC, it was incredible.
You mentioned there about Grado and sort of like, people can just connect with them in the street, and similar to you. How important is authenticity in wrestling, especially like for yourself, being your authentic self in the ring, out of the ring, just telling stories and everything?
I mean, I think it's you walk a fine line, because obviously you're, if you're giving yourself a gimmick or trying to make yourself more interesting or give yourself a backstory, but it's committing to it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's easier to go off of something that's authentic. Like, Grado really is, that's his personality, that's what he's like. Even myself, it's two completely different acts, but I don't try and be the way I am. Do you know what I mean? And even with the fetish thing, like I went back to before, if you're going to do something like that, you have to go for it. You can't be concerned about what people think, or if you're going to offend people or whatever else, that's fine. You know, it's like people are offended because it's unusual. Whereas I wasn't ashamed of, you know, that at all. You know, that's what I like. If you don't, I completely get it. I don't understand how folk can sit for 9 hours playing Fortnite. But I don't demonise them for it. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's your thing. This is totally different things, but that's my thing. That's yours. But I think, yeah, it's like just, for me as well, and I harp on about this all the time to my students, you're wrestling for people, not at them. Do you know what I mean? Like, you have to be like selfless about it. I've seen so many people who have failed because they go, well, this is what I do. This is my style. Yeah, but you know, you have to change, because if you're booked on a gala day in the afternoon and then booked an ICW at night, you can't do the same thing twice. Or if your act or your style isn't working and folk aren't enjoying it, and you refuse to change it, then you're going to just do yourself out of a job, because we're not going to change the show for you. Yeah. You have to go out there and connect with people. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, for me, I remember I was talking to Shab when we were doing the Kinky Party. It was just one day, the photograph get posted up, and I zoomed in, and I mean, everybody knows, some people, everybody had a big smile on their face, or they were laughing, and it was me and him crowd surfing through the. And I mean, I've got goosebumps talking about it, because I was like, it sounds so stupid, but I was like, mate, what we're doing is fucking important here. Do you know what I mean? Because like, people are having a really shit time, and people are skint and they're working, and it's fucking raining all the time and everything else. Like, we need to make them forget about that for the time that they're at this show. They're paying money to come and see us. Yeah. So how dare I go, well, this is what you're getting, because this is what I want to do. Yeah. You know, you're working for them. And I think only by them feeling that are you going to get any level of success. Like, folk love seeing Grado. Grado makes people feel good. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So, and that's what you need. Like, we're entertainment at the end of the day.
What do you think? We had attempts to kind of capitalise off of that wrestling boom in 2010 during like WWE, NXT UK, and World of Sport revival attempt. Yeah. What do you think went wrong with it in terms of, particularly World of Sport, where it was like kind of, the episodes filmed and they went out and it wasn't really much buzz. What do you think it was that kind of missing? We talk about authenticity. I mean, I think that's a perfect example of an opportunity that was dropped. You know, many people have tried to, benefit from that boom, thinking, well, if I just do that, that works. It doesn't. Mm-hmm. You know, so people that just go, I'm going to start a wrestling company and put on 4 death matches, and everybody will be bleeding all the time, and it doesn't work. It's because it's not entertaining. You know, it's not. If you sit, there's only so many. You can sit for 5 matches. If you can sit for 6 matches of folk going through light tubes and still react by the 6th one, you're a sociopath. Do you know what I mean? Like, because you desensitize. Like, it's too much of one thing. It's like going to a gig and every song sounds the same. You would eventually get bored. You need to chop it up. But the World of Sport, it wasn't. You know, if you're going to try and bring back a brand that was so big, I think the whole thing looked like a version of Total Wipeout. It was almost like a game show style. It was very glossy, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was like wrestling made by people who had never seen wrestling before. And I don't know why, because I'm pretty sure there were people that knew. But I think if you're not true to yourself, if you just give your ideas away and crumble to the TV people, you know, like, this is my vision, this is what I want to do, and then producers and execs come in and, you know, writers and go, I think you need to say, well, that's not how this works. It's not how it works. And I think you need to be willing to lose it, to just bastardise an idea. And I remember when it happened, like, I had spoken to somebody that was, I don't know what his role was within the company, and I think I was deemed to be too risky for that. And I mean, what do you mean? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like I think there's a difference between unpredictable and unprofessional. You know, I get what this is. I mean, looking back at the time, I was like, fuck, I think I should have got that. Am I gutted that I never knew? No, because they were probably right. I don't think I was right for that. But then I think that happened as well, and I think a lot of the talent really kind of fucked themselves, because I remember when it happened, it was all of a sudden everybody, were all taking minimum this. Like, just because it doesn't make any difference. Like, if you're the star of that and you're drawing tickets, but I don't really see folk flocking to a wrestling show because they saw something that was on World of the Sport that was on TV for how long was it on TV for?
Yeah, there was a few episodes. Yeah, there was a pilot, and then there was.
And it's a shame, because it could have been a full-time gig for a lot of guys, and I think with these things, it's like 5-star. Do you remember 5-star?
Yeah, very well. Yeah.
It was just, my God, fuck me. Like, I did their shows. Wow. And it was just like, again, it was that, it could have been something great. Like, we were showing up at the Echo Arena, all these big venues everywhere. Folk were getting promised dates and putting in their diary, and it was just a mess, a complete mess. But then folk were just so caught up in the, I'm in an arena, or this is on TV, or that's not enough. It's not enough. The show has to be good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, you've got this guy who was giving folk all these dates and then just cancelling them, and folk are losing money, and it's like, and then I was getting annoyed because when it all failed to shut eventually, folk were like thanking him. Like guys that were working in shows, like, thank you so much for the opportunity. And I was like, why are you thanking this guy? He's just gave you a year's worth of dates and then cancelled them like this. You should be furious. Why are you being polite about this? But it's all that, like, playing wrestling or playing wrestling promoter. Like, if you want to do it and give everything. And it's the same with the ICW thing. Like, there was no kind of blueprint for it back then. If folk were going that way, we went that way. And there was no guarantee that it was going to work. There was no guarantee that it was going to be successful or even liked. Like, when we started travelling, we were worried that we were a regional show. Will ICW translate to London? Yes, because other than the accents, it's a show for everybody. Do you know what I mean? And when we travel, we want to bring people in. Like the show tonight, for example, we've got probably more outside ICW talent than we've had in a long time. And I'm excited about it because it's matches that I want to see, and it's people that I know and people that I like and people that I know are hungry and talented and they want to be here. And I try to get them on as much as possible, but it's not just as easy as going, I will just bring a car from London or bring a car. Because that's when your business starts to suffer. And you see, and it's difficult not to try and compete. But when you're booking with your ego, it won't last. And you see it all the time. You see these companies that will bring in, there's 6 Americans on every show. And then eventually the money runs out. And then they put a show on with no Americans. And nobody wants to see it. Because they get used to that thing and it's, well, I've not got that one. So you're not building a scene here. You're using X, WWE X, this, just to get this quick fix, but it's going to burn out at some point. Whereas us, I really want to build a company that's based on British guys. And when we're a Scottish company, we need to create a talent pool from Scotland to survive. Because we cannot be bringing folk in every 3 weeks from everywhere. We just can't do it. But you do that in order to then go on the road, and then you start bringing different people in. So it's nice. Listen, it's great to have an import now and again. Even when we had Rey Mysterio, we've had Sabu, and it's great. It's like Sabu, for example. Like, in this company, it makes so much sense. And he's everything you would expect of Sabu. I mean,
that's good to hear. That's great.
He is not in any way a disappointment. He's a fucking psychopath. So he's mental. Mental in the ring. I remember the first time I wrestled him. I think he should. So he was late, really late. So Grado was wrestling Colt Cabana. I was wrestling Sabu. And we booked this venue and it sold out in minutes. So then we booked a venue that was 5 times the size. Sold that out. Biggest thing we'd ever done. Probably me and Grado's biggest matches to date. Sabu was late. And if memory serves me right, he was walking through the airport with his headdress and stuff on, and got he just flagged bullshit, right? And then so he showed up late, and I'm like, "How you doing? My name's Lee," and he was just walked right past me. And as I went in, he went, "I broke my collarbone." I'm like, all right, cool. So he's like, okay, so you feed out, I'll flip over the top rope. I was like, you don't need to do that. And he was like, people have paid to see Sabu. I'm like, fair fucks, man, that's cool. And the last thing I remember, as he was talking to me, he reached behind and took a wooden coat hanger off the hook, and he snapped it, and he was like, yeah, so I'll just, and he put this spike in his boot, but never referenced why. And I remember just being like, cool stuff, see it. So the whole time, so I'm in the ring, and nobody thought he was going to be there, because like at this point he was notorious for not showing up, whatever. We left like a kind of beat, and then his music came, the place fucking erupted, and out comes Sabu, looking exactly like Sabu. And then part into the match, he just called a stab off, because I carried the big corkscrew. So I'm like, I don't know this guy. So he's hitting me with a spike, and I'm hitting him with a corkscrew and back. And then he got back, and he was kind of hot at me, and I was like, listen, you called it. Like I didn't know what the spike was from. He was like, no, fucking hit me. And he was like calling me for not stabbing him hard enough in the face. You know, I'm like,
it's just the way around, isn't it? Being stiff.
Honestly, it's so good. And he falls down the stairs all the time, which makes me laugh. Like every set of stairs, like he'll run up them and say something, and then forget they're behind him and just backwards roll down them all. Did it in the tour bus. It's like, hey guys, and people are all playing Resident Evil or something. And he was like, oh, bang. Instantly forgot they were behind him. I came backwards, just lands at his feet and walks into the night. In fact, the first time he came over, we were in a hotel in Edinburgh, and we were walking through. It was mad, right? Because he was meant to leave. His flight was early, and he was like, no, I'm staying with you guys. So he just didn't go to his flight. And the next morning, we were at breakfast, and I remember, I'm pretty sure Wolfgang was like running about the hallway with a motorbike helmet on and a pair of pants, just goring people. And then Sabu walked in the stairs. This was like 8 a.m, and he was like, I gotta go find Baby Oil. He just walked into Edinburgh with no phone. Why into Baby Oil at 8 a.m? I don't know. And I was, this guy is fucking amazing. So like when you bring these kind of people in, there's certain, but I think when you get to the point where you need Sabu there to sell tickets, you're in trouble. And there's Britain now, man, there's so much good talent, great talent, and respectful talent. Yeah. It's like the scene has cleaned up a lot, like, because it used to be, it was a really volatile scene for a long time, you know. And I don't think it's just wrestling. The world has changed, attitudes have changed. People are more kind and accepting. Not everybody, but back in the day, there was a lot of bullying, and there was a lot of shitty attitudes, and you know, I've been here longer than you, so you'll suffer. And I went through shit, so I'm going to make. I've never understood that. Like if you've been bullied relentlessly, why would you ever subject that on somebody else when you get in a position of power? It's crazy. And I think now people genuinely want to help each other. You see folk talking and conversing as opposed to like going nowhere near each other until they have to plan their matches. You know, and that all comes together to put on a great show. So like tonight, having so many different people in, it's going to be a completely different ICW show. And I can't wait for it.
Yeah, you'll see your trainer as well. You're training some of the young lads and speak to some of the people as well. Yeah. Like, how is that? Is that rewarding? Is that like kind of? I mean, it must be to some extent.
It's mad. Like I never thought I would get any sort of buzz like wrestling ever. I thought coaching would be a thing that I did when I stopped. When I stopped physically wrestling. But it's the best. It is. It's unreal. And we do shows called £5 wrestling. So again, times are tough. So we do like not a student showcase, but it's predominantly GPWA students, but they get the full setup. So the full ICW Asylum setup, screens, lights, exactly the same as you would if you get an ICW show. But tickets cost £5. So you can bring your family for the price of one ticket. So it's building that other scene, you know, bringing kids in, families, and giving them an incentive to come in for a cheap price and then put on a great show. But I don't wrestle in these shows. I kind of work front of house. And there's so many times like I've stood and just watched somebody absolutely smash it. And I know the backstory to that because I've seen them at training. I've seen them struggling with this one move or this one sequence or practicing it. And then when you see them smash it and you hear people reacting, I know how that feels. You know you've done something right and folk erupt for you. And I'm sitting in that, like, I'm soft now. I was talking to Thomas about this earlier, like, I cry for anything. I don't know if it's just my age, but like, I sit there and I'm like proper, sometimes I need to kind of leave, because it's like, you've seen these, people come in for nothing, some very, very young, like some of them would do shows and can't come to the after party because they're not old enough. And then you see them going out there and absolutely killing it. Like Landon Riley is my nephew's favourite wrestler. I mean, I've been patched, like he's far surpassed me. And I'm like, that for me is cool, because like my nephew he loves him. Like he went and got his ear pierced so he could have a diamond in his ear the same as Landon Riley. And he stands at the barrier and like he'll always go over, like comes in and I'm like standing like my heart's like clenching, do you know what I mean? But you watch this and you go like, this is you building a scene. Because I'm nowhere near those shows and neither are the ICW roster. This is just people that train at the Asylum. And then you kind of move up to Blockbuster, which is our family brand. And then on the ICW. So, we had at the last, The Only Way Is Up, we had 2 homegrown GPWA students main event. It was a 4-way ladder match. It was Ben Rogers, Landon Riley, Theo Doris, and Lewis Girvin. And you see that, and for me, I you're never going to do this forever. I've said the other 21 years, your life takes a change. Like, I kind of started getting into acting and stuff like that. So, but the thought of stopping is always difficult. But for me, I need to almost do myself out of a job. Like, I want to train these people to not just take over, but to be better, so that when the time comes that I step back, I'm comfortable with it and go like, it's in safe hands with these guys.
Yeah, left it better than you found it.
Of course, because when I found it, it wasn't very good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not only the quality of the product, but just the way wrestling was. It was like dark.
Yeah.
A dark, seedy place.
Yeah.
And that's not just 20 years ago. This is like not that long ago.
Yeah.
But just it's important as well. It's not just what you train them in the ring. It's be respectful, be on time, offer to help. Like if you're doing all this stuff, and I said, don't get concerned about it. Don't if you're busting your arse and you're doing all the crew shifts and you're building the rings and you're tidying up and you're doing this and that, and somebody else isn't, fuck them. Don't let that diminish your passion for it or your enthusiasm, because what you're doing is a full apprenticeship and it'll get appreciated. And don't get me wrong, just because you help doesn't mean you're going to get a booking. But I just think if you finally do make it and you become popular and you look back and you can go, well, I did flyering, I did postering, I built the rings, I did this, I trained. You feel like you deserve it. You've got in a full apprenticeship. And the attitudes we've got, especially in the Asylum, the GPW is never. I started that with the other 4 guys, like, how long ago, Thomas? Like 10 years ago.
Yeah, 10.
I'm the only one that's left. But never has it been a better school. Never. Like everybody supports each other, helps each other. We're all pushing each other on. And it's great. It's such a joy to work in an environment like that. Having been in an environment which is toxic and full of drama, I don't have any time for it. And I think back then there was all different coaches with all different opinions, whereas like the buck stops at me now. So if it's just I just don't put up any shit.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like I don't if I hear of any drama or rumblings or it gets nipped in the bud there and then. They get called into the office, what's the problem here? This, or people aren't pulling their weight, they get pulled into the office. I'm telling you, this is how we feel about this. It's only going to affect you. And sometimes just by having that conversation and letting them talk to you, you can kind of pinpoint the problem, whether it's a personal thing or they're just not feeling good or they feel they don't get what they're deserving or whatever else. You just kind of sit and talk. It takes the weight off their shoulders and they go to training feeling much better and more motivated. And I think it's having that constant dialogue between the coaches, the management, the office, and the students, where they don't feel that there's a separation. Like, you can chap your door at any point for any reason, and it just gets dealt with. You know, and it's like folk don't talk to each other anymore. They just let things bubble up and stew, and then it eventually just blows up. And it's not worth it, because everything can be solved by just having a conversation. Do you know what I mean?
I was wondering, what is the most important lesson that you teach the students to you? What is the most important thing that they need to know from you?
Beyond take a bump.
Is that?
Beyond that, take a bump.
Well, the bumping is the easy part.
Yeah.
I think if you really want to do this, and I mean if you want to make a career out of it, don't leave your job to do this. Don't leave college or university. You need to have that at the same time. But you need to give everything you've got. You know, like, and I would never ask anybody to do stuff that I never done. But, you know, just always be ready. Listen, ask questions, volunteer, put yourself out there. Because you can be the most talented athlete in the world, but attitudes stick. Do you know what I mean? Like, for me, I could have somebody who's like, they can do everything, absolutely everything, but their attitude stinks, or they're just about a dick, or they make folk uncomfortable, or whatever else. It doesn't matter. Like, that will stop your training. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's by all means you need to push yourself out there and be selfish to an extent, because we're all trying to get the top spot and we're all trying to get the gigs. But attitude, honestly, it's the one thing that is more likely to stop you getting bookings. If your shitty behaviour or your shitty attitude goes before you. Because even if you don't meet somebody and let's say 3 people that I trust or that I like, that I know well, and they go, "You such and such," I've heard, you do kind of go, "Right, I'll just leave it then, because I trust you." Whereas if you're always volunteering, you're putting yourself out there, you're like go look for the work as well. Don't just sit and wait for it to come to you.
Yeah.
And I don't really blame anybody for it. It's no fair to compare myself to them or my generation to theirs, because like the world changes, so does attitudes. Folk are just generally more laid back and kind of complacent these days. And I don't know if it's because there's more work and more opportunities, whereas back in the day you were scrambling for it and desperate to get that wee spot. But, you know, just, I don't think there's one thing that you can say, this is what I would say. Listen, be respectful, ask questions, volunteer, put yourself out there and get as much experience as possible. But if you want it, go fucking get it. Go get it, because it's only up to you. Nobody's going to give it to you. And, you know, down the line, if you stop wrestling or something happens, at least you know, I went balls to the wall. It didn't work out. Okay. Or I went balls to the wall. I've got this. Yeah. And that's the reason. So, you know, I think it is really just be brutal with it. Don't take no for an answer.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you want something hard enough, you know, fucking go for it. Because you might just get there.
So, unless anything more specific you want to ask, I'll finish up on kind of, we're asking everyone if what moment got them into wrestling, like when they going way back as a fan, as a kid, you know, was there a moment or a wrestler or a show that like grabbed you and thought, you know, either this is great, I want to do this, you know, this is what I want to do.
So I got into wrestling quite late. I never watched it as a kid.
Oh, right.
It was high school, about 9 to 8. I started wrestling. And it's weird because my cousin used to collect stickers, you know, the sticker books. And the 2 names that I always remember hearing first were Mankind and the Road Dog. Don't know why those 2 stuck, right? But then I started watching it. And Mick Foley was I loved him. I think I loved the characters. He was entertaining. But he was the first person to make me feel something. Do you know what I mean? He wasn't your mega athlete. He wasn't your cool. You had all that in the show, but I resonated with him more so. And I remember he used to make me nervous, you know, because the build-ups and the promos and how he would kind of tee up his matches. So by the time that came, and you were sitting at 2 a.m. before school watching Cactus Jack versus Triple H in the cell, and your heart's thumping because I was a teenager, but I was terrified that he would lose because that meant he was retiring, and he did. He did lose, and I was so invested in it that my mum kept me off school the next day because she was like, I can't risk him going to school and one of his mates making a shitty comment and he attacks them and he gets suspended for school. So she kept me off for my own benefit because I was heartbroken. And I wasn't 6 years old. I wasn't 6 years old. I was a teenager. But then when I obviously Mankind was the prominent character when I was there, Cactus Jack, and then you go back and you start watching everything. The King of the Death Match '92, him and Terry Funk, and that's when I was like, this style, can I feel something for this? And it wasn't pretty. It wasn't. I don't really think it was even that well done. But if you watch those matches, even now, it looks like you're watching something real. Just the whole environment, the kind of outdoor. By the time the final comes in the end, Terry's a mess. Cactus is a mess. It's dark. The smoke. It looks like a war zone, and you're just seeing these two guys like fighting to the death. That's what it looks like.
Oh, yeah.
And they're crawling towards the ambulance at the end, and you're going, "Fuck! Is this is the same sport as WWE?"
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like I'm watching the same thing, but it could not be more further apart. The promos, just like it had so much. It's hard to describe it. I think at the time he always said like he was angry because he was in Japan and he wasn't making much money. He was missing his family and he was doing this and he was always hurt, and like that comes across in the way this guy's talking. It sounded like he was always about to burst into tears, and that's what that kind of the high pitched kind of talking came from. And he wouldn't look at the camera and he was just in this zone. And you watch that and you go, that must have been a real harsh environment to be in. And he was coming back, and like he said, when he came back from Japan, he didn't have any more muscles, but people feared him because he was out there proving a point. And I think just seeing the same guy, I'm watching him do that, and now I'm watching Mankind do this, and then Cactus Jack, who did that, has just morphed from Mankind doing that to come back and do this. And I'm like, this is one guy doing this in real time, and it's I think that's the joy as well. Like, it's like Mankind taking the mask off and ripping his shirt open. He just ripped his shirt open. Yeah. And Triple H just like, and you're like, fuck. Like, it makes you sit up and you're like, my God, like he's shapeshifted into this other, and you believe it. You know what I mean? Like the Mankind the night before get obliterated, absolutely done. Fuck, Cactus Jack, you're in trouble. It's the same guy. Do you know what I mean? A day's passed. It's that thing. It's like you can manipulate people's feelings, and that sounds. You say manipulate sounds bad.
No, I don't mean.
But that's why you're here, right?
Yeah, definitely.
You come to a show to feel something, because if you're not making somebody feel something, what's the point? Across anything, you know, I mean, nobody want, like, it's like a song, or you go and watch a play, or you go watch a film. You want to be engrossed for that 3 hours. Because you're probably trying to get away from something. Yeah. You know what I mean? And all this stuff costs money. You can't go to the cinema for free or wrestling shows or whatever else. So the least we can do is for that 3 hours, just fucking leave everything at the door. Come in here, suspend reality, leave the stress and the hard work and the pain and all that shit to us. And then hopefully when you leave, you're in a better mood than you were when you come in.
Yeah. Right, that was excellent